Got it.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the footballing audience, I'd just like to take this opportunity to read out the Premier League table to you, if you don't mind. I thought it occurs since the start of the season, we haven't actually done this at all. So all these segments you're doing are completely out of context. But if you're looking at the bottom half of the table, you've got the relegation zone currently populated by Nottingham Forest on 9, Wolves a point behind, and then Leicester a point ahead in that sense. Then you have a bit of a scramble. Southampton, Villa, Leeds all on 12, Bournemouth on 13 somehow. West Ham and Everton joined 14th. Brentford, top of the pile in 15. And then the top 10 is in no particular order. Well, I say order. 10th Palace, 9th Liverpool, 8th Brighton, 7th Fulham, Chelsea 6th, United 5th, Newcastle in the top 4, along with Spurs, Man City, and Arsenal leading the way. Now, the reason I did that, boys and girls, is to note one very interesting outlier in the league table as things stand, and that's Liverpool. So, Liverpool currently have a wonderfully symmetrical start to the season in that they've won 4 games, they've drawn 4 games, and they've lost 4 games. Which,
Very
if anything, is
palindromic, yes.
it's a very feng shui start to the season,
Same
which
with
is
Palace. Palace have the same as well. I've
yeah, we
noticed
do,
that.
and we're actually only beating them by virtue of a 9-0 thumping of Bournemouth. To be fair, um, but the main story, I suppose, in that is the fact that obviously they've already lost 4 games, which I think is actually the same amount that we lost last season, which is quite startling. But it also means that, like, in regards to what will be the target, which is challenging for the title, we're 13 behind Man City and 15 behind Arsenal, and we're also now 8 away from the coveted top 4
Mm.
place, which is currently
Was
Newcastle's.
wasn't it wasn't it no, it wasn't Arsene Wenger. It was Alex Ferguson who said that like if you wanted to win the league, you couldn't lose more than 3 games or something like that. I think he
His
had to
his
win it.
his maths was always you don't lose your away games and you try and win your home games. That's the way he always looked at it. And now that was your kind of leeway, was about 3 to 4 games. So yeah, like going by that logic, like you'd probably say, well, in his time, you'd probably say you get away with a 3 or 4 losses, but with the sheer like cutting edge of Man City, you can't really afford to lose many games in a season anyway. So it actually speaks volumes about how that with like a team like Liverpool already written off with 4 losses, regardless of the rest of the games and the performances. Once you've lost 4 games, there's no yeah, the narrative is you've no chance of catching Manchester City, which is fair because like they're an empirical team and you need teams that are on superb form to even keep up with them. But the conversation we're having today is about Liverpool because I feel like we kind of let this stew a little bit to see how this is going to pan out. So after 12 games, well, 13 after this weekend, and I think we have one more before we break for the World Cup.
Yeah, well, one more in the
Two
league.
technically games, yes.
So yeah, we I think almost every team has 3 games left, 2 league
Mm-hmm.
games and one Milk Cup. Because I know
Yes,
not to talk across you or derail you a slight bit, but we've got Chelsea the morning of your game, which is really
yes.
weird at 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock kickoff is strange, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just to cram everything in. So we're playing Chelsea, then we've Sheffield Wednesday on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think our final league game is away at Wolves.
Yes, and I think our schedule is Spurs this weekend.
You've Derby,
Um,
don't you? Derby,
no, no,
Derby's
no.
is
Derby,
Derby on
yeah, Derby
in the cup, yeah.
in the cup, and I believe then I want to say Southampton is our last game before we break. Um, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, it's it's Southampton. Yeah, I was right the first
All
time.
right. Yep.
So Southampton's our last game basically. So with that, then we're kind of discussing like this very strange season that Liverpool have had, and amongst Liverpool fan bases have been these various kind of different post-mortems, if you will, of how Liverpool season's already done. Um, and it's all very kind of different opinions and different viewpoints and kind of different narratives is also a way of putting it. But as an outsider, Neil, I'd be intrigued to see how you kind of see this Liverpool team because I have a certain view, certain assessments from kind of with my Liverpool fan hat on and hat off. So I'd like to see what kind of a proverbial outsider feels Liverpool is doing this year.
I think it's just a bit crazy. Like I think lots of people are drawing trying to draw lines comparisons between Klopp's disastrous last season at Dortmund
Mm.
Remember that one
Yeah,
when they
because
were
it's year
actually,
seven. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they were in the fucking relegation zone for like the
Mm.
first half of the season. Now they did
Yes.
rally. The second half of the season was markedly better, but then
And they won the Pokal that year as well.
yeah, but
Mm.
Jesus Christ, like they didn't exactly set the bar too high
No.
in the first half. So lots of people are trying to draw parallels there, and I don't see that. I think because that Dortmund team, when you look at when they were floundering at the bottom,
Mm.
literally at the bottom of the Bundesliga, he's still a really young team that could improve. Lots of that team were under the age of 25, 26. They were quite a youngish team. I don't think they had too many players over the age of 30. Whereas when you look at the Liverpool team he's got now,
Mm.
quite a lot of older players there. Um, I think it's just a perfect storm, for lack of a better term, um, in that you've got a confluence of a huge injury crisis at midfield. Like, holy
Mm-hmm.
fuck. Like, I saw the bench for your last game, and there was like three 19-year-olds there, and I was going,
And two
fuck,
goalkeepers.
and two goalkeepers. Exactly. I was
Mm.
like, holy shit. Like, and one of them is Adrian, who never plays because he's not signing a new contract and his contract's up in the summer.
Yeah, he's
Um,
there for cannon fodder essentially for Allison.
exactly. That's pretty much
Yeah.
it. Um, you've also got just lots of players hitting bad runs of form. Van Dijk is
Mm.
nowhere near his imperious usual form. Jota, I know he's injured, but he when he was on the pitch, it wasn't that much.
I think he was still ailing from the groin pull he had last season. I don't think he ever
Maybe,
really
yeah.
got to a point where he was fully fit. And then the one game I actually would say he was actually full form was probably the City game, and then he fucking popped goes a hamstring. So like
Yeah.
he poor fucker couldn't win. Like yeah.
You've got Nunez taking an awful long time to fucking settle into a new league.
Well, I didn't want to make a
Yeah,
point of
no,
that
no,
when
no.
we're
We'll
discussing. So
definitely
yeah.
touch on. We'll have.
Mm.
There's no way you can discuss Liverpool right now without talking about Nunez. And also, you've got Salah suffering from the dreaded third contract
Yes.
performance drought. I think I remember us talking when Salah got that new contract.
Mm.
I think I said to you, I was like, well, it'll be worth it. I think you mentioned the question of like, oh, I just hope it's worth it. I was like, look, it'll be worth it as long as he doesn't do what Aubameyang and Ozil did to us, which
Mm.
is sign the contract and then go off a cliff performance wise. And unfortunately, he's done just that.
Mm.
It has led to jokes that is he carrying his new salary around with him like it's strapped to his fucking body because he just seems slower. He seems slower to everything. He seems less inclined. He just seems less. It's funny. He's playing worse and he's making other people around him worse because he's now got a selfish streak in him that wasn't really there beforehand. I know there was a competitive streak along with Mane,
Yeah.
who, by the way, you missed terribly.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think their respective forms for their clubs kind of lend an awful lot of weight to the notion that you should have sacked off Salah and kept Mane.
Mm.
You should have done the opposite of what you actually did. Again, that's whataboutery of the highest order. So yeah, I think it's that. I think it's just a perfect confluence there. And also it's Klopp tinkering with the formation. He's not really sure now. And he's not sure with this formation whether or not you should stick with the 4-2-3-1 or whether or not you should go 4-3-3. It's messing around. Um, and he's not really sure. And that's transmitted to players because they're used to Klopp being like, I want you to stand in exactly this spot when this ball is here, and I want you to run. Whereas now he's like, I'm not even sure of my formation, which is being transmitted. So yeah, I think it's just a confluence of a lot of. I don't think it's any one thing, um, that's caused such a massive drop off in team performances. I think I think there was an Opta stat there. You're something like you're like 12 points down from this time last season from where you
Yes.
were. That might be wrong, but it's
No, no,
something
no. That,
double
that
digit.
that is right. We're actually on par with the season that got Roy Hodgson sacked. That's
Jesus
the that's the
Christ.
same competitive record. But then again, it's also a very different league at that time as well.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
fucking hell.
different context,
Oh yeah, yeah, no, that definitely needs contextualizing. But yeah,
Mm.
I don't point to any one thing. I don't think it'll last. I think coming out of the World Cup, I think Klopp will pull it together. He's a good enough coach. I don't think he'll resign. I don't think the board will sack him.
Nope.
Um, contrary to rumors that after the Forest game, he got his first, shall we say, written warning
That
from the
was complete
board.
bollocks.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like,
Yeah,
that is absolute fucking garbage.
yeah.
But that's, I mean, I'm ignoring all that shit. It's just, yeah, you've just hit a bad run of form, and lots of bad shit is happening,
Mm.
and that's pretty much just fucking that's it. You gotta go through the storm rather than you can't go around them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I think you have a few points correct there in the sense um where like I said, it's a bit of a perfect storm. Like I don't think you can actually attribute it to one exact problem is the thing. There is a couple of things going on at the same time. And some problems are of Liverpool's own making, albeit and granted of Klopp's making as well tactically. But there's also stuff that where um it's very hard to kind of pin down. But like I can also there's two ways to look at it in a sense. There's issues that are our own making,
Mm-hmm.
clubs making, shall we say, and then there's issues that are just happening because this is a horrendous season of football. So, like, if you like for you needed to if you wanted to contextualize the season, like bear in mind, like as time of recording, the World Cup starts in 15 days.
Crazy.
That's a full an actual World Cup, and bear in mind the FIFA had
And
their
there's
way.
still
This
three
would have
games
been
to go, as we stated. There's still two league and one cup games to go, and you're
yeah.
like, the fuck? Like, there's players dropping like flies recently now.
And
Um,
that's a big part of it too, I think, because I think there's a psychological thing where a lot of these players do actually want to get to Qatar and they want to get to the World Cup and represent their country because particularly in Brazil, I think there is a very strong desire for Brazil to win the World Cup this year, particularly politically. There's a lot of shit going on in
more so than
Brazil,
usual. I mean, they
more so than
practically think
usual.
they own
Yeah,
it, and
yeah. Well, that's the thing. You see, Brazil, I think are hoping for kind of football unites the camp a bit because we're not going to talk about it. I don't know we will get to talk about it, but I think there's a big division between the players that are on either side of the politics because Fabinho's wife has been rather annoying Liverpool Twitter by favoring the far right Donald Trump cocksucking fucking preference that's there. I said I wouldn't get political. But the crack is like in this season that you're going to have, we have a World Cup pretty much just like interjecting in a full season of football. So essentially, the Premier League has started early. The Champions League has been compressed into basically 6 weeks of football, as opposed to the like traditional 10 weeks where you have like a week off and go again, week off, go again. The domestic cups now are pretty much all going to be delayed until after Christmas, where typically you would get to say the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup by this stage of the calendar. Now we're only going to get to the third round with Bolton, and then essentially everything's going to get truncated from there. The FA Cup is practically going to be like a mini tournament in March and April, which is ludicrous to think that. But
the Europa League
so that's
podcast as well. That's mad. Like,
yeah, even the change to Man United because the way their kind of qualification is gone, they actually don't have time. They don't have space for three Premier League match days. So they have to engineer a time. They might have to play them after the season's over, which is
and
insane to think.
exactly,
You
and
know,
that's if everything ran smoothly, but it didn't because football got cancelled for 2 weeks because the Queen
the Queen
died.
died. Yeah. So
And
you
you're like,
have that. So you
you're
have that
fucking kidding
context as
me. You're
well.
gonna
Yeah.
postpone shit. Like,
But bear in mind, like we already have this really weird Premier League that these clubs are trying to essentially like put out fires, like mitigating stuff as best they can. And it's grand for certain teams, let's say, I'll use Arsenal as an example, let's say, where you kind of knew where you're going to rest, you're going to land at a certain stage. You're going to be fourth or fifth, and you kind of knew, like, from that, okay, we're going to be fifth. We can consolidate, and we know how to build our team. There was a very obvious mission statement to get certain players in, bet them in early, and then start training. So you guys were already preparing for the next season, let's say, from a certain point in June. Whereas for Liverpool, we were playing the Champions League final. And that was after FA Cup final, Carabao Cup final, pushing Manchester City to the end of the Premier League. So essentially, if you treat that, that's four finals three finals indeed in 2 weeks in our case, but also the League Cup as well. So we played as many games as mathematically possible had we not won, let's say, the Champions League the year before, and we had to go to Dubai in the middle of the year for a fucking tournament. So we played regulation as many games as we could that season, which I think was 63 games. I don't think anyone has ever done that since Chelsea 2004, I want to say, which is an empirical team. But even then they struggled as well. So you're coming from that, but you have a 63 match campaign, followed then by a shorter summer break than usual, followed then by a preseason that like kind of ticks all the corporate boxes in East Asia, and then you also try and bed in players. So there just has not been any time really for Liverpool to actually get their mojo back. And also, much to your point about signings and departures, yes, Mane has been the big miss. So we'll talk about that on the tactical side, because you've essentially had to, you're not replacing Mane outright. You're finding someone completely different to Mane, because
Yeah,
logic.
it really has been. They really have gone on that, and now for something completely different.
Oh,
Uh,
and this is the man with three noses. Like this is the comedic non sequitur that we've been asking for. But that's the thing. That's what Liverpool are kind of shadowboxing themselves into a little bit. So you have all that, and so you have that context, and that big consequence means that you have players who are both physically fatigued because their preseason has been shorter, more intense, and the bodies just went, nope, I'm done. And you also have players who are mentally fatigued because they've just basically gone through a a season where they've done a domestic double, they were close to winning the Premier League, but they've also got so close to the Champions League as well.
yeah, that's
So
the
there's
thing.
a
Like you
you know
saying like you'd four finals. He's missed out on half of them,
yes.
and the half that you missed out on was the half you actually really, really wanted. You'd have much fucking preferred winning the Champions League and the Premier League as opposed to the Milk Cup and the FA Cup.
Well, it's actually quite funny because that actually like those two cups actually ticks off the entire kind of bingo card of things that Klopp has won. So like now this team has now actually won everything there is to be won in that for one team, which I think is genuinely impressive, because I'm even thinking of other world class teams that have done the same thing. I'm thinking like the Zidane era Real Madrid team, the Pep Barcelona team. Like that's the echelon of teams they're in now. But what we don't often remember is the year after them, the hangover year. So when Zidane leaves, what happens to Real Madrid? They go to shit. What happens when Pep leaves Barcelona? They go to shit, and those projects just happen. Now that being said, this could have been something that we could have dealt with way ahead of time. So
Well,
when you look at
wasn't there the comment? Wasn't it the first team coach? Wasn't he? That was a press conference only recently where he stated
mm,
that, like, yeah, no, that we've been talking with the board constantly,
mm,
and all of this was planned out. And you're sitting there and you're looking at it going, are you serious? Like, because
I don't think it was planned out. I tell you what, like the a lot of the actual hopes and dreams of this season were banked on us signing Ireland Tchouaméni. A lot of it came down to that, and I think it was the bank on the hope that it would give Fabinho a natural competition in number six, and that was the
there's
hope.
no plan
And
B, no alternative.
no, no, but that's how the recruitment works. If you read Pep Linders has a book out recently, and he says that they narrow the scouting down to one player and they court that player over and over again. It's a terrible way to do business. My
That's
personal opinion.
really
You
bad,
want plan
particularly
A,
when
B,
you're,
and C.
particularly if you're up, like if you're up against.
You're up against Real Madrid,
Yeah, if
like
you're up against, I was about
yeah,
to say, like if you're up against other teams, like say maybe Napoli, but Napoli are doing really fucking well.
yeah.
But if you're up against lesser teams or teams slightly on your level, then
Mm.
maybe yeah, you can afford to have that. Oh no, we want this guy, or it's him or bust kind of thing.
Yes, and
But like
that's the principle,
it
him or
wasn't as
bust.
if nobody knew that Real wanted Tchouaméni in because he was the last part of that holy trinity of that midfield that they were rebuilding. That was Valverde, Chouameni
Camavinga,
and
yeah.
Camavinga. You know
Mm.
like I think Chouameni was the last part to slot in
Yeah,
there, but they always knew that. I'm like, I think it was Ancelotti was like constantly like, practically giving this guy hand jobs through TV interviews, like going,
and that's the thing. I think it was a flight of fantasy to do that, and the fear that Liverpool fans have now is that the kind of the pursuit for Bellingham now will go the same way, because as Real Madrid will say, hey, having three superstars in midfield is great, but also even better having the best number eight in the world. That'll be nice
well,
too.
see, the
You
thing
know.
is that what Real offered Chouameni, I think, was something that Liverpool didn't or couldn't offer, which was like you were saying that Chouameni was in to be competition for Fabinho,
Yes,
whereas Real were like, no, we want you in because we want to build our entire midfield around you and these two other guys. Like we're
exactly, and
gonna,
that's the thing.
we,
The project was already there for them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's my point. They're like, we don't
Mm.
want you to be the competition. We want you to be the player that we sign in competition to compete against. And
Exactly. Yes.
that's I think that would have been the, oh yeah. And obviously, yeah, it's Real. It's Real, like fucking
Yeah,
hell, like you know. But
yeah.
again, I think more so was the we're going to build everything around you, and we want you to be this kind of midfield trifecta that are going to power this club for the next, hopefully, fucking 10 to
10,
15
10 to 10
years.
years.
Yeah,
It's 10 years,
10 years
10
at
years with those
least,
players. Yeah, at least,
at
yeah.
least. Because all three of them are like 20, 19 years old, 20, 21.
Camavinga's 20, Chouameni is 21, and Valverde is 24. So
Ah,
yeah, like they're there forever. And again, like if they pair it up then to get Bellingham, who's 21, then that midfield is established for 10 years. Like that's an empirical team.
yeah.
So and that's even excluding what they do up front. I mean, Jesus, there's so many options there, and like Mbappe's always going to be around, so that's always going to be a
Yeah,
possibility.
Vinicius
But that's the
Jr.
thing.
seemed to have found his fucking shooting boots at the
Vinicius,
bottom of his.
Rodrigo, they've got superstars like coming out of the woodwork.
They are
So that was
paying.
the thing.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are like they're not like, oh, we're not. Well, I mean, obviously they did pay a lot of money for Camavinga, Tchouaméni, and I
Yes.
think they paid a lot of money for Valverde, but they're not like, I'd say wages wise, these guys aren't on huge amounts of cash.
Not yet. That's the
Yeah,
kind of sweet stuff they're in now. And then once they win more, that's where the wages, and that's where you might get the Barcelona situation where Busquets is on like a fucking small country per week, and that type of stuff.
what's
We'll
it?
get to that
What
later
is it? At
on.
Barcelona call it? Oh, what's the concept? A virtuous circle.
Virtuous circle,
Yeah,
yeah.
the virtuous circle that they sign superstars, which then win, gave
Mm,
them more money to sign more superstars, which they win, more
yes.
money, like
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
how well is that going, Barca? Anyway,
Oh, we will get into that. And
we
it's
will get into that, yes.
spoiler alert,
So I think
not
what's
good.
happened with us now is that when we have I think there's two issues with our actual transfer program, and this is something we did have control over in a sense because Liverpool is still is now one of the most lucrative clubs in the world to go and play for because you've got Jurgen Klopp, you've got perhaps some of the best coaching systems in the world, and you've got superstars to play with, you know. So you have that, and you're also in a position where you could argue with Liverpool, you are in a position to be a first team player. There is opportunities there because with Manchester City, you look at like say someone like Jack Grealish and he's a bench warmer, hasn't scored a goal for love nor money. Likewise with Calvin Phillips, who I know has got to
100
coming in
million.
injured. Yeah, for 100 million, exactly. He's there to warm the bench. And his productivity has been very poor. You look at Calvin Phillips and you say, look, I understand he's injured, but he's not going to upend Rodri, the kind of way. So those are players that are designed for the squad, and that's a good way for Manchester City to run their club. But I don't think Liverpool like doing that themselves. They want to be able to have a natural competition. So say, like hypothetically, if someone really outperforms Fabinho in the midfield in training, then that person could get the start. That's not how it's panned out in the end because I think Klopp likes his favourites and he likes the structural systems the way they are.
Do you think
Which
he's a
then also
favoritist kind of coach? I don't get that.
he is absolutely, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
get that kind of sense from him, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mm.
Like, um,
But he's the same with Dortmund. You could rattle off the Dortmund team that Klopp played with like off the top of your hat. You know who's your centre backs. You know who you have.
yeah,
He somehow gets Grosskreutz in the team. He has his
isn't
favourites. He
that because
does.
they were just the best players? Not that
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
favoritism kind of thing. I mean, like obviously, yeah, a coach is going to favorite his best players, like the guys who kill
Mm.
it in training day in the day out. But I wouldn't suggest that he would that if a player was. He didn't strike me as a coach that if a player was outperformed in training, he'd still pick that player.
No, I don't. What he would do, he'd be proportionate about it. So let's say, for example, like if and again, the injury crisis has not helped us whatsoever. So we haven't been able to blood in players in the way
Yeah,
we would. But
but put
let's
the
give an
injury
example.
crisis to one side.
Yeah, let's give an example. A hypothetical. Let's say Calvin Ramsey had come in and he was fully fit, right? Calvin Ramsey just complete like practically unknown in the sense with from the Premier League standard, but has come in from Aberdeen having a whopper season, hitting the same numbers as Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney, and Trent Alexander-Arnold in the SPL. He comes in and if he's a house on fire and he somehow upends Trent in training, would Klopp give him the start? Probably not. But here's the thing about that is that there'll be certain matches where
but he's not given any right
tactically,
back. Who's he play? He played Milner there for the
but that's
City
because
game.
Ramsey was injured. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Oh,
Like
was
Ramsey's
he
only
injured?
back
All
this.
right. All
Oh yeah,
right.
no, he's been injured since the start. So like
No.
Ramsey only had his first game, or well, first sub in against Napoli for the last 20 minutes, and he was absolutely fucking fantastic. He
Yeah.
was making more defensive runs than Trent. But that's again, we'll get to that point as well. So you have those issues where the actual swapping, the actual rotation that you do need to do, those options weren't there because essentially you had this massive drought of players in the midfield. So you were stuck with a leggy Fabinho and a half-injured Thiago and a Henderson who's leggy himself, rather than being able to go, okay, let's bring Keita in for this match. Let's go bring Oxlade into this match. Both of them have been perpetually injured. And here's the thing, we had control of that. We know
Oxlade-Chamberlain was perpetually injured. You're speaking to an
yeah.
Arsenal fan, and I'm going to say, really, let's spoiler alert: water is also wet, sky is
Yes.
blue. I know
But
you
this is the
got.
thing.
I know
We have control over that.
I know you
We could do
somehow
that.
had two. I know you somehow managed to get two uninjured seasons out of the fucker,
Yeah.
which was something we never were able to do. But like, I'm amazed he's even still at Liverpool. I genuinely believe had he not gotten because he injured himself in the preseason, didn't he?
This preseason, yes, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I was almost certain that he did that. I think if he hadn't injured himself in the preseason, he'd have been gone.
Yeah, probably. And I think that was the presumption with Keita because there's issues with his contract coming up as well. But the
Oh
reality
yeah,
is
he's not
Keita's
signing one, isn't he? Not
well,
or
there's no point because like he hasn't fucking played a game for us. Like he's still injured. Like the guy, like the God love him. Like I feel bad for him in a sense because like he could have been a player that's come up for, but it just hasn't happened for him. And it's at a certain point, loyalty and love for the players has to kind of take a back seat and go, listen, it's hurting the club full time
yeah,
to have players who are perpetually injured because again, Klopp wants to keep a small enough, tidy group of players, and you can't have people that are content constantly on the treatment bench. And these are not one-offs. It's not like Luis Diaz fucking up his ankle or Jota fucking up his hamstring. These are players who are constantly injured, who have proven that they can't get fit. I was always worried that Matip would be one of those players where he always seemed to have a big injury each season. This year, I'm kind of giving him a bit of an allowance because fuck me, look at the matches we have to play.
yeah.
But his fitness has got under control in the same way that there was fears that Darwin with his hamstring would be bad as well, but he hasn't had as much of an issue himself. Again, I think just the actual quantity of games is actually suffering for most of these players.
Well, Darwin had a number of those games off.
He did, and that's
result.
also that hasn't helped matters. But that's the thing. So I think we've snookered ourselves in terms of particularly the midfield because we're
Hey, your
leaving
midfield is
ourselves.
fucking paper thin. Like holy
It's
shit.
very paper thin, but it's also old. You see, that's the difference. They've all grown old together, and this is something that could have been avoided. Did you really have to? Do you have to keep Milner an extra year for team dynamics? Probably yes. He's a very good voice to have around, and he's actually probably more effective off the pitch than on the pitch. But then again, he'll do something like what he did against Man City and keep fucking Phil Foden in his pocket. The man's 37. This should not be happening. But James Milner doesn't defy that.
Like I think that was a real point to prove kind of thing. We spoke about this earlier
We did,
on
yeah.
on a previous one, and I reckon because Foden the last time the two of them met, Foden turned them inside out, and I think it
Yes.
was like Milner was like, no, put me on for this one, boss. Put me on. I'll fucking like if I can't contain this guy, I'll fucking kill him.
But that's the thing, and he did contain him. So like, but he can do that for one game, but you can't ask him to do that at his age, like every single match. That's
No,
just
fuck
not that's
no.
not
Holy
reasonable,
shit.
not sustainable. So Thiago has had knocks, Henderson's had knocks, Fabinho has, Aramco have not had knocks, but he's also been perhaps one of our worst players this season, and
He's
I
been
think that has
so
a lot to do with
bad.
it.
Oh my
He's been
god.
very, very bad. But that's the thing. Players like him are like that. Like I remember Nemanja Matic having a horrible season for Man United. And because he was having such a bad season, it was upending the defense because he wasn't making the kind of the horizontal runs to shield the ball. And I remember, I think there was a clip that's going on from the Leeds game, which we lost. Because again, I have a point to make about those games we're losing. That Fabinho, when the ball goes out from our box and Leeds are on a counter, Fabinho's jogging and he's just be able to do a trot like he looks like he's so fucking heavy as well. Whereas Darwin, full sprint, and the guy is so fucking fast, which is insane. He's a specimen. He set a record.
He set a
Yeah,
record. Yeah, he did.
yeah. He's
But
actually
yeah,
fast. He's empirically faster than Erling Haaland.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so he runs there and he makes a clearance. He makes a block and he starts the counter off for Liverpool. He's in our box. It's like, but like, and Fabinho, by the time you can actually count, I counted from the time that Darwin got back and got the ball to when Fabinho got back into position. It was 6 seconds.
Fucking hell.
Now that sounds like small. That's small. That's a lot for a fucking team. Because bear in mind, if you know your tactics and you know the way Guardiola operates, you only get 6 seconds to get the ball back, and you have to go into position. But that's just Fabinho coming from one box to the other, and it takes him 6 to 7 seconds, which is ludicrous after chasing back after the ball. So he's been a big issue, a huge issue in the midfield. And the more I see him, the more I see Liverpool play, the more I identify that he is actually the actual problem in the
What do you
team.
reckon is the cause for that drop off? Because he's not been always that bad. He just has
No, he
not.
hasn't. Last year he was fantastic. He
He
was
was a
absolutely
brilliant
fantastic.
player.
I
He
think
was
there's
such
two
a
things
reliable
happening.
metronomic
Yeah.
motherfucker. Like I hated him. Like he was just so calm, poised.
Mm,
It's funny that you mentioned that he's slow because he was always one of those players that seemed to have an extra second or two with the ball.
yeah.
Like they got the ball and they always seem to have that extra second to pick a pass or to make a move
Mm.
or do something like that. That time seemed to slow down around him, and now it seems he's just slowed down and time's just running around him now. So
But
it's
you
so
can also make
crazy.
the same argument.
When I watch him, I honestly think I was like, have they just gotten somebody else and stuck the Fabinho jersey on him? Like, is he injured? And they've just gotten like a double out of the crowd. They saw somebody in the crowd and went, Jesus Christ, he looks a lot like get him the fuck in there. We
I
won't
did
tell
hear that
anybody
there's a
that he's got
conspiracy
like,
theory going that
yeah, we
he's
won't
lied
tell
about his
anybody that he
age.
got his legs chainsawed off in a bizarre fucking hunting accident or something like that. I don't
No.
know. Like, it's just, I look at Fabinho and I'm what? Like, this is,
Mm,
it looks like I could be him. Like, fuck that. I don't play it, I
yeah.
feel, but it's
I think
crazy.
there's a few things happening here, right? So I think Fabinho has been one issue, but there's also been Van Dijk. So I think Van Dijk and Fabinho have a nice little understanding with that
I
when
think Van
both.
Dijk's just burnt out. I think that boy is burnt the fuck
Well, I think
out.
they're all
He
burnt
is
out, man. That's the
fed
thing.
up.
Yeah.
I don't think Fabinho is burnt out. I just think he's bad. He's just playing really
No, I think.
bad.
But
It's
I think what's
but with
happening is.
Van Dijk, I see a really fatigued player. I see a player who's just done with this shit.
Mm,
Um, to be honest with you now,
and the trouble he has is, you see, he has to cover plug holes because he hasn't had a natural partner this season. So like the first, I think the game against Napoli, I think was only the second or third time he's played with Kanate, who is essentially primed up to be his successor in that midfield, or in that defense, I should say. He's the same type of player. He has that pace and he has that physicality. And my goodness, if you see him how he played against Napoli, he was absolutely fucking immense.
Kanate is
Like
brilliant. He's a
he is a
fantastic player.
fantastic
He
player.
is
But the
really
difference is we
fucking
only
good.
had him for 3 games this season. You know, kind of way, it's been the same issue over and over again. And as much as I like Joe Gomez, there's too many flaws in his game, and particularly against Forest and particularly against Leeds, making the
And
same mistake over and
they're
over again.
known flaws. They're known flaws.
Known flaws,
People
exactly.
people know how to. Oh, I just need to run on the outside of this guy, and I've got him fucking toasted.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's been the difference this year, because if you look at the games that we've played, I think the games that we've won, the likes of say Manchester City, and I think most of our actual good performances have been in Europe, particularly against, let's say, I didn't mark the one against we actually played now against Napoli was one of our better performances in the year, but we were still getting like bombarded with shots, you know, kind of way. It's just that Napoli never really put any of them away. And then perhaps the goals against the games against Rangers were just kind of indulgent in a way, I couldn't
It's
justify the
Rangers.
7-0
I'm
against
like
Rangers.
they,
Yeah,
they've set an unwanted record. They are now officially the worst Champions League team ever.
yeah, they are.
Uh,
But that's what I'm saying. Like putting
like
seven behind them isn't a great achievement. But I think the away game against Ajax, I think, and the home game against Ajax, it was a like end to end game. Those were our better performances in the year, I think, because we had to motivate. Like we didn't need to motivate ourselves for those games. Whereas I think it's a kind of a weird kind of prioritization of the games where it's the Champions League. That's always been Liverpool under FSG's priority because that's where the money is. That money for winning group stage games is more lucrative than winning Premier League games at this moment in the season. So they always prioritize the group stage games to win those games, get into the round of 16, and go hell for leather from there. We can trust Klopp to get
second
the.
in the group, didn't he? He finished
We
second.
finished second in the group,
Yeah.
yeah, because we'd have to have smashed Napoli to succeed them in the group, but that's fine because we'll get Porto. That's just what happens. Uh, I know we give out about Man City always drawing Shakhtar, but there's some weird shit going on there with Porto and Liverpool. Just saying, or Benfica and Liverpool. Weirdly enough, there's always a trip to Portugal in early February for us. Weirdly, but
That's a nice
I'm
place to
joking.
go in early February.
Yeah, absolutely, lovely weather. Especially for scouting players. But
Mm.
no, in all seriousness, though, like we always prioritize them. So this year we've had to prioritize them in particular. Like we definitely have to target the Champions League, get into the round of 16, and then at this stage of the season, let's focus on the Premier League games. Let's try and win games there. So you can kind of see where at certain points we're thinking like, right, we need to get these guys primed to make sure we win this game, and then we'll see what happens against Forest. Then we'll see what happens against Leeds. And what happened is, I think teams have picked up on that fact that we've got bigger fish to fry in certain aspects, and they'll just outwork us. One of the biggest things about the loss against Leeds was that Leeds outrun us by 11 kilometers. Now, Leeds are one of those teams that
if they do that, they did that against Man U as well, didn't they?
And Chelsea.
And Chelsea, yeah, it was about 11.
Chelsea, they outran them by 15 kilometers.
Fucking hell, that's insane. When you consider that, like, an average elite tier midfielder covers about 12K in a game.
Yes.
So that's in
Milner 16.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. Any non-Milner,
non-Milner, okay, fair, okay. Semantics,
player.
Neil, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's basically they're playing in essence with an extra player.
Yeah. Now they're playing constant pressure on the ball all the time, and that's where they get their opportunities, by catching people just completely off guard, by having nothing but youth running in the team and just keep running and running and running and running, and they burn the players out that way. That's the way Leeds will win their games. It's a system that's going to work great against the big six, but it's not going to work well against teams around them. It's a really weird way of playing.
It's not a long-term strategy. It sounds very scorched there, to be perfectly honest.
It's the RBL ball almost, weirdly, but it's the way they work. But that's the thing. So any teams that are high energy and high pressure are going to win against us, which is why Forest beat us, because they played a system that was high press. They went away from the back three where they're trying to be defensively solids, realizing, we actually can't defend with the back three, weirdly, so let's just press the ball. And that's what they did. Same with Leeds, that's what they do. Now the weird thing is, and this is going to sound like a very strange statement, we're more likely to beat Spurs than we are to beat Southampton, because Spurs are not a high pressing team. They are,
oh my god, no. And they're so bad. They're so boring to watch.
But that's what I mean. You see, they will lull us into a fault. They'll find the different ways around us, as opposed to, say, Leeds and Hampton. They will just run around us.
I don't think so, really. Right? Here's what I think. I think Klopp will look. There's a weird thing about what Spurs are doing now this season, in that they're surrendering almost entirely the entire first half of the game, and only really waking up for the second bits.
Yes.
So when you look at, like, I think they had a goal chalked off in extra time against Ajax, wasn't it? Oh no, against, what was that Champions League game? They had one chalked off.
Was it Marseille? Was it
Marseille? No, not Marseille. Who's the other one?
Frankfurt.
Maybe. Well, there was. They actually almost had a string of 3 games in a row that they won with goals in, like, the 95th minute or 93rd or something like that. They can way into extra time.
Yeah.
And they're just brutal slogs of games, like, and it's not sustainable, and it's absolutely not sustainable now. Their players are dropping like flies.
Yeah. Which was going to happen because Conte runs them into the ground in pre-season, and now you've got a heavily truncated season now.
Yeah, and it's hilarious. Like, but that's the thing. Like, I see them, they just totally surrender the first half of the game. Hope to go into the break not too far behind, if indeed at all. And then, right, essentially he's trying to boil every game down to 45 minutes. It's like, we're not really playing for the first 45 minutes, lads. We're just defending. Everybody get behind the ball. If they give us an opening, go for it. Son, you can go for it. Or Kane. It's now all Kane now.
Now all Kane, yeah.
So I say Son will be getting asked a good few questions. How painful is that fractured cheekbone?
Are you sure you're not a surgery? Are you sure?
We could do some wonderful things with plastic masks. You know that.
But you're right though. But that's the thing. That's the thing with that game.
Yeah. So I think Klopp will look at that and go, this is bad because I need my team to come out of the blocks, because they're going to surrender the entire first half, and we need to stuff them. We need to go in at halftime 3-0 up.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, Spurs are going to come at us in the second half, and I don't think he's got a tremendous amount of faith in this team that they'll be able to withstand that.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think motivation is going to be. The motivation is not going to be an issue against a team like Spurs, because they are a direct rival.
So you're going from a motivation point of view, yeah.
You see, that's the thing. That's not an issue for us. I don't think, for big teams. Whether if it's a big match,
it wasn't in the City game, like that.
That's the thing. We were grand against City. I think we were grand against Arsenal. We just got outbeaten. We just got outfoxed by a better team. And likewise, I think if we went up against a Chelsea team at the moment, or a Man United team, like we just got like the Man United team. I think it was issues of our own like failure in a sense of our own design. We just didn't take them seriously enough. So in that respect, like I don't think
Same with
motivation is
us,
an
actually. I
issue.
think that's why we lost them as well. Just
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
just
like, play them
but
off the
that's the Man
park,
United team that's
still
gradually
lost.
getting better as well. So like
Mm.
you're preparing for two different sides of the coin there.
Mm.
So in that sense, when I look at the Spurs, like I feel better going into the Spurs game than with the Southampton game because I know what to expect from Southampton. They are Hasenhüttl, they are high pressure, high press. It's like, oh fuck, they're gonna outwork us, type of shit. So you have to try and like basically try and like resist
And
that
you know
level of talent.
Hasenhuttl saying that as well to his players. Like, we need to hustle. If we out hustle these guys, we will win.
Yes.
And
Well, I'll
that's
put it
it.
this way. The season where we had like the massive injury crisis defense, it wasn't a coincidence that Hampton were able to beat us because they just pressed on the weaknesses. And I think that's also that's kind of circling back to my other point about the tactical side of it, where that teams have now, because they've been studying the likes of Man City and Liverpool so much, Man City have changed the way they played because of Haaland, because of other players coming in. Like again, we mentioned Alvarez. Is like, so if there's something wrong with Haaland, oh yeah, here's the new next Sergio Aguero to worry about. So like they have got options where which we don't. We've kind of kept things relatively the same for whatever reasons. I think there's shit with FSG that I think they haven't really discussed about, but. So we've kept the same, whereas Man City have changed and they've morphed into something else. So Liverpool have got the same setup going on. You know what the weaknesses are. You know if you pull wingers in front of Trent and Robertson, you're going to get space to bombard the center backs. If you overload or you crowd a certain position on the board, whether it be either at Trent's flank or at Fabinho's position, I think you can get space there. Like if you're able to actually enclose Fabinho, you choke out a lot of the play there. In the same way that if you actually enclose Van Dijk, you choke out a lot of play there because Van Dijk is actually kind of almost a playmaker in his own right from the way he plays the ball.
Yeah, but
So I
Van
choke.
Dijk is still playing somewhat well. Like if he's got the ball, it's quite difficult to get it off him. If you try and you can't put balls over Van Dijk, he's too fucking big.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's still got a lot of pace, so he's difficult to outrun. If I had to pick between to attack either Van Dijk or Fabinho, I'm going for Fabinho. Fucking
100%. Yeah, yeah, and
seven
that's
days a week
absolutely
and
fair.
twice on Sundays. Like,
Yeah, that's
um,
absolutely fair. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's and the issues with them, like, I could actually really attribute it down to the fact that they're just tired. They're physically and mentally tired. It's not down to a fact that like there's an issue with them. I think it's just that they have gone through a 63 game season and they're not fucking spring onions. Like Van Dijk is
but
near
again,
30, Fabinho's 26 and
but
27.
again, like this isn't rocket science. This was
No,
known.
yes,
Why why wasn't this addressed?
and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. These are things that we could have fixed ourselves. Now, listen, we can
Why?
mitigate for.
But
Yeah.
why? Like, surely the argument. I'm like, it's an easy argument to make, even to. Let's be fair to. I don't want to hop on the kind of anti-American bandwagon kind of thing there because yeah, we give Todd Bowley and Jesse Marsh. I actually don't give Jesse Marsh any shit, even
Hmm.
though he is the Leeds manager and I fucking hate Leeds.
No, I think
But
he's a very good coach. Yeah.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. But like, surely even to an American, it would have been easy to make the case. These guys are burnt out. We need at least 4 or 5 fucking players.
Yeah, and
Is
that
it
and
the
that
case
has
of
been the case.
what you were
Yes.
saying there, your plan A and only plan A thing kind of backfired there because you missed out and you're like, oh, well, we just won't sign anybody then.
Yeah. Like we're like I think there's a lot of kind of like stories going out now to try and get the Liverpool fan base kind of excited again. Whereas like they're linking us to Declan Rice and they're linking us to Bellingham. I think there's a little bit of like kind of PR stuff going on there to try and get people back on side to say everything's fine, we're in the market. It's like you aren't really in the market. You want one player, and if you don't get that player, you're not in the market. So, kind of way. We know how you operate by now. Now don't get me wrong, the actual when you look at say the success of certain players and thinking, oh, I can see this system does actually work, but then you also see certain players that if you do go if you go to plan B is not that good. Like the emergency signings when we had the injury crisis was Ben Phillips and Austin Kabak, and well, Kabak is now playing at Norwich and Ben Phillips is now playing at Rangers. That didn't work out in the same way that we knew we needed a midfielder going into the summer. That was obvious because I was even saying to Kira like during the week, we've never adequately replaced Genie Wijnaldum, which it seems like a ludicrous thing to say, but we never actually did. All
No,
we
it
did was
wasn't, it
change
was
the way the midfield operated
exactly. It
to
wasn't
suit
a ludicrous
Thiago.
thing to say that you never replaced him. Who could you replace him with? It was more ludicrous that you got rid of him. And
Mm,
we've stated on this before, and I've stated a number of times, like, why did you get rid of him? Like, the guy
mm.
is never injured.
No,
Like,
and come here
for a team
in a
that
season like
routinely
this,
gets
he would have been ideal.
exactly
Ironic
for a
enough,
team
he's now out of the World Cup. He's injured.
exactly exactly for a team that routinely gets massive injury crises, a guy
Yes.
who was up until after he left you never fucking injured. Like, why was he let go? That is
Yeah.
it made no sense at the time to me now. Sorry, it made no sense at the time to me then, and it still makes no sense to me now.
Yeah. And I
I
agree with
just
that.
baffling.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's and like I said, these are things that we had control over. We have been in the market for our midfielders? Absolutely. There's tons of midfielders around. You could pick people. We're constantly with Conrad Limer, who's available for pittance in January because his contract's up and he's not signing a new one. We can get him in now. We can get him in to compete with Fabinho. He is the perfect competition, the perfect foil for that position because he's a completely different player to Fabinho. Fabinho is a tower of strength that you have to try and play past. Conrad Limer will knock the shit out of you. That's the thing. You need options. You need different types of players with different types of situations. And this is where now I come to the players that I think we have done right. And obviously I'm not expecting miracles out of the likes of Elliott or Carvalho, but Carvalho has won games for us, and Elliott is having a really, really good season. But we can't be putting our hopes and dreams on a 19 and a 20-year-old, no matter how good they are. In the same way that now a lot of Liverpool fans are getting really excited about Stefan Bajcetic, who came on in the Napoli game, and along with Carvalho and Darwin and Ramsey, really re-energized the team. And when you see these lads come on with like under 20, 21, 22, and they're just flying around the place, you're thinking, that's a bit more like Liverpool I remember, because they're giving the instructions to just fucking go anywhere you want, keep running. But like I said, you can't be relying on players that are so young at the moment. So we have a weird situation where we've got a lot of 17, 18-year-old like young players, and you have really old players and no one in between. And that's where the project has fallen down a bit, because everyone's just grown old together, and there's just a little bit of a way for these players to start peaking. Much to your point, Neil, you could have just signed a 23-year-old midfielder or a 23-year-old forward to suit the bill. You didn't have to just wait for the right person. Just get someone in even as a stopgap. And shockingly enough, the stopgap that we do get, Arthur Melo, goes on a fucking 3-month injury. So we couldn't even get that right. You know, Arthur not well known for his injury record to begin with. But I do think one of the actual players that's done really well for us is Darwin, shockingly enough. And the reason I say that is because he's just crazy. He's just absolutely fucking mental. I
he's
really
batshit, yeah.
It's brilliant. And that's the thing, like he is bringing this very strange X factor that I can't really say has been in the Liverpool team since perhaps Luis Suarez, weirdly enough. Look, with Suarez was just crazy, you know, and the weird thing about it is like you couldn't actually attribute what Suarez was doing at any one point. He just does his own thing. And Darwin Núñez, I think I saw someone describe him adequately as like, it's fascinating to watch him play because he looks like he's learning how to play football in real time. And that's kind of the feeling I get from him, is the fact like this guy is going to be a cult hero no matter what happens in his Liverpool career. But when you look at his underlying statistics and you look at his runs and his pressure and all that, the guy is a specimen. Like he's making so many sprints. His XG is like on average 3 to 4, which is Haaland and Jesus levels of XG at the moment.
Yeah.
But then when you actually look at what he's been playing and the minutes he's had, he's in the top 3, I think, for goals per game at the moment. Goals per minute, I should say. And like I said, he's competing with Haaland in that sense. He just hasn't played as many minutes, obviously because of the red card. And I think he's far more effective and in this moment in time as a substitute.
Well, see, that's the thing as well. Like you spend 100 million quid on a fucking guy you're leaving on the bench a lot of the time. So like, does that make a tremendous amount of sense? Like that to me is the crazy part about it. Like the fact is that like
I don't think it is that crazy though. I don't think it is, because I think he's the type of player that does create chaos for 30 minutes. I think he's more effective. Who's he? Who do you remind me? Jekyll. was
Yeah,
a
but
player
you're
that
like
reminded me of
100
that.
million quid. Jekyll didn't cost 100 million quid.
No, he didn't. But this is my point. You see, when you are if you wanted to win games for you, then if he's doing it in 30 minutes, then fair enough. But if he's doing it over 90 minutes and a team are getting used to his runs and his movements and so forth, then that's a different story. It depends on which way. Is he more successful right now? Yes, he's more effective in as a half an hour substitute because he is getting more goals right now at that moment in time. But Firmino was the same, or not Firmino, was Luis Diaz was the same way when he came in. Jota was the same when he came in. It's the way these players are blooded in. Because bear in mind, this guy doesn't speak a fucking word of English yet. Like literally, he is starting to speak with Mo Salah with fucking sock puppets. You know, kind of way. Like the
Yeah.
club were saying, like he's becoming best friends with Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, and he has no idea what they're saying. Like
Yeah.
you know, kind of way. So like it takes time for him to bed in. I think with the break coming up, and they're all going to either Dubai for certain things, and depending on what happens with Uruguay in the World Cup, like a lot of these players are going to blood in a lot quicker, and at least for certain players that aren't traveling to the World Cup, it just gives them a chance to fucking rest. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not too worried about the former Mo Salah because he hasn't had an adequate preseason for me. Um, and I think just giving him a break for 2 months, I don't really think even Thiago's going to be in the Spain squad. Spain squad's going to be weird this year, I think, because the Hay is not on the short list. Weirdly enough,
He
so there's
wasn't
going to
even
be
on the long list. He wasn't on the
the long
55.
list,
He wasn't even on the 55 man long list.
which is insane to think. Insane, yeah,
It's insane to think, but it's kind of, yeah, I suppose Spain just don't want a non ball playing goalkeeper.
yeah, and
That's just
that's
it.
it. It's a purely stylistic choice, like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's certain things I'm not worried about, and Darwin is not something I'm worried about at the moment because you can see how his play is going to get better. It's not going to come good in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to come good in March, April, where the kind of shoes on the other foot, where he's starting to peak when other teams aren't.
But it is that like, what is your season gonna fucking look like at that
But we don't
time
know.
March?
Yeah.
That would be my severe worry.
Mm,
And when you look at it now, that's a very warranted worry. I
mm,
don't think that's like I'm just making shit up. Now I'm not worried in particular, but like talking to other Liverpool fans, and they're just
mm.
like, even if they did ascribe to he'll peak come March. Don't worry about that. You'll kill it. And by the way, I actually kind of believe. I believe you. I think he will hit it. I think he'll come out of the World Cup and hit the ground running.
Mm.
But I was thinking, how far behind are you going to be? Like, can you really make up that much ground?
We've done it before. I'm
Yeah,
reminded
I
of the
suppose.
of the
Yeah.
year. I mean, we'll put it this way: in the season where everything went wrong, like 2 or 3 years ago, where we lost Van Dijk, we lost Gomez, we lost Matip, all out for 6 months, and we were playing a makeshift defense. If it wasn't Henderson or Fabinho in defense, the defenders of choice was Nat Phillips and Reese Williams,
Hmm.
who was a young player, and Nat Phillips, who is the most unstylistic player we could think of. But fuck it, he was a centre defense and he's still on the books. Let's use him eventually. And
He's
we
now at
we got
Forest.
third. Yeah, we got third out of
Yeah.
that. We got a third place finish out of that. So I think it is possible. But bear in mind, like I said, that's why I drew attention to the numbers there because this is a much bigger gap to make up now.
I was about to
Um,
say, and
you
you
know,
contextualized earlier on with the Roy Hodgson thing, like this is the bad
mm,
start. It's a completely different league. It's very much a different league from the last time you did that.
yes.
Whatever the fuck's going on at Newcastle wasn't happening. Um,
Chelsea and United have their new ways as well. Arsenal go in good form. Like you could argue that the top four is already booked out.
yeah,
You know,
I wouldn't.
I
Um,
wouldn't either, but you could make that argument already. You know,
it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say. I'm not sure what Chelsea are going to do. In particular, now that Chilwell's going to be out for a while.
yeah, there
Um,
that's gonna be a question mark.
you know,
Yeah.
they're getting found out quite routinely. I don't know if you want to segue into another team right now. Have we exhausted the Liverpool angle?
Well, I'd say on that point, like we would be relying on teams troughing
Yeah,
is the way I would say it to
yeah.
end this kind of on this point. Like like Spurs, I think are going to start troughing after the World Cup. I think that's very evident because there be certain players are going to be overused in certain teams like Kane and so forth, and Romero
Kane's
actually for
like, the thing
Argentina.
is, Kane's been overused for the last 3 or 4 years. It's not.
But like I said, he is one ankle injury away from Spurs' season falling apart.
Yeah.
Kind of way, and England's competition falling apart. Like he should be in bubble wrap. He shouldn't be playing games at this rate. Spurs should just hope for the best and go like, you know what, we'll just take him off for the first half and bring him on for the second type of idea. But they won't do that, and Kane wouldn't allow it himself. But this is the thing. Like I can see at the moment it looks bad because I think certain teams have started off well because they've only have Premier League games to worry about. Newcastle only have like Sunday and Saturday to worry about, whereas Liverpool have had to go, okay, we've got Napoli to go to, and then we've got fucking this in midweek and that midweek. Same with Arsenal. You have been able to package, you have Thursdays to worry about. You've been able to rotate your squad enough to get through it. And even then it was a bit of a struggle towards the end because of the
Very
PSV
much a
game.
struggle. Like to be honest with you, I think the Thursday Sunday fucking thing is even worse. I don't understand why, but it just seems that players just react better to the Tuesday or Wednesday and Saturday.
It's the circadian rhythms of it.
Yeah,
like it's sometimes it's better form. Like
so fucking
the same with
weird.
United. United toiled through their group as well. So I think it suits a bit of teams differently. In the same way that Chelsea have kind of had a bit of a trough now, they've got the new manager bounce and now starting to steady out a bit because they got trounced by Brighton, as you mentioned, as you kind of alluded to there. We don't know how the Arsenal game is going to go, which I'm very intrigued by because form guide would tell you that the kind of like Arsenal. The perception is that they're doing really, really well.
That's the thing. It's
but they've
weird.
tapered a bit.
We're going into this game like as clear favorites, which is really fucking weird. Now I understand, like we've beat them in 2 previous FA Cup finals, and we've the odd smattering of wins, but they were always surprises. Whereas now, like come Sunday, we're actually expected to beat them, and that's crazy.
You're going in favorites.
We're going in as favorites, and it's mad. It depends on how Chelsea. I think it depends on how Chelsea set up. Do you want to talk about this now?
We'll add a little footnote to this. Then we'll end a little chat and just discuss Chelsea. How are Chelsea doing?
Chelsea they're doing good, bad, not good, bad, and now good. It depends on which point you look at. As you said, they started off well. They got the new manager bounce. Now
it's the same Jekyll and Hyde setup I've seen at Liverpool. That's the way I would say it. So I think you can get a good Chelsea side, you can get a really bad Chelsea side, and that's the same with Liverpool at the minute.
It's odd. Potter seems to be implementing a lot of things that had already been tried and discarded because they didn't work. And one of them is namely Sterling as a wing back.
Which like ew.
It's crazy. That was tried before and it didn't work. It was tried on a number of clubs. I think Liverpool tried it, didn't they?
It was actually the reason. That was actually the reason why he fell out with Brendan Rodgers was because he was being used as a wing back. His agent at the time said, "No, he should be a striker." I was like, "Get the fuck!" I
think you'll find you're both wrong there.
Exactly. You're wrong on both counts.
So that's crazy. So now he's at Chelsea. He's back, and you're saying we spoke about the 4-1 drubbing at Brighton. I'm not going to say that was entirely his fault. It wasn't. But Brighton recognised that he gave Cucurella, who was also having a mare of a season, and who was the left-sided centre-back, he gave him no cover whatsoever. Sterling did not track back and help him out whatsoever. So they're just like, hang on, the poor fucking everything down the right. And that's what they did. And just Cucurella was stood there going like, I've got 3 guys on me at one point here, and they've all just passing the ball around me. This is ridiculous. I need fucking help. So that's it. So that's what there's a number of reasons why they got drilled 4-1, but that was one of them, which was, why are you feeling Sterling as a wing back? He is not a defensive bone in his body. So I'm really hoping that they do the same thing against us.
But they could. This is the thing. Like, I think the teams have had to cobble together solutions on the fly because they've had so many games to worry about. Whereas it's the same point I was making about Liverpool. Like Leeds have only had Liverpool to worry about that week, whereas we've had to worry about Ajax and Leeds. Whereas with Brighton, they can focus like their 7 days on Chelsea, whereas Chelsea had to go, we've got to play fucking Salzburg and then play Brighton.
When you look at the respective fortunes of both clubs, you simply must.
That shouldn't be an issue. Absolutely right. It shouldn't be an issue, but this year it is. I do honestly believe it is an issue this year, and it's going to be a recurring theme until I think like when the World Cup is actually over and the dust is settled, and we see now we have all these games to worry about because those small teams are going to be in the same boat because they're going to be in cup competitions. They're going to be like doubling up on Premier League games. We're all going to be in the same situation. It's just this part of the season is an issue for the big teams only. I tentatively say, because I know some have been rescheduled, and the Queen's death and may she rest in peace and all that bollocks. Like that's always been an issue. There's no interlulls to kind of break the issue, the season up. There's a pretty fucking big interlull coming in 2 weeks' time that's going to do that for you. So I think that's where it's all kind of balanced out in a sense. So Chelsea, I think, are weirdly enough in the same boat as Liverpool, because they're trying to make tactical switches on the fly. They're rotating a lot, and sometimes you're just going to get outworked, because we had the same thing against Brighton as well. Like, we were pushed to the hilt by Brighton. Like, it was a 3-3 draw, and we were lucky to get a 3-3 draw out of them. That was only the first game under the new regime under De Zerbi, and you can clearly see where he's coming from. He's going, let's fucking push, let's outwork everybody, and he's using Leandro Trossard, who's having a phenomenal season, as his focal point, whereas Graham Potter was using him as a kind of auxiliary to, say, Welbeck or Maupay at the time. Now he's like, no, I'm going to put him dead center. He is the center of focus. Everyone work towards Trossard, and he's scoring fucking goals per game. It's great the way it's going on. But like I said, it's easy for a team like Brighton, or say I'd even throw Newcastle into this category. They can focus on their weekend, no bother, guilt free, in the fact that they don't have to play 2 games a season. You're right in what you're saying, that some of these big clubs should have the rotation for it. But look at Liverpool. Where's the rotation? All their players are injured. For Chelsea, it's a case of like, I'm not playing him. He's shit. That kind of way. And then also they have problems in, like, is some players that they would play week in, week out, like Kante, is clearly gone. His legs are fucked. Like, he's not going to be in the squads. And you can probably attribute that. You can probably say to some of the big clubs that they have a lot of issues in a sense. But maybe that's a kind of an argument of big teams complaining about their embarrassing the riches in a way. But yeah, that's my view of it. I think it's just a quirk of this really awful fucking season of football. And I really hope they all get a lovely break at the end of all this, because they fucking need one. Because I think this summer, the summer 2023, is going to be the first summer in about 4 years where nothing is happening on the men's side, which means they can now all enjoy the Women's World Cup instead. Like, I hope they can do that. Can you enjoy just watching football for a while on their super expensive yachts or manors or whatever the fuck they do for a spare time? Because, like, it's hard to feel empathy for a rake load of, like, millionaires doing a job that everyone would kill their mothers to do. But my God, they're making me try this year.
Yeah, no, it's good. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we have a fun weekend to look after, and I'm sure you at home are also looking forward to it. Because I'm sure we are as well. We say this after, I don't know, we just spell out some random score lines and just hope we get it right. Like, it's like, wow, I can't believe Spurs beat Liverpool 4-1. Like, who's expecting a hat-trick from Heiberg of all people?
I severely doubt you're going to lose.
Reverse jinxing.
I reckon you're going to
don't jinx us.
I reckon you're going to beat them 2-0.
Right. I reckon Chelsea and Arsenal are going to have a wonderful game, and Arsenal will beat them 3-0.
I'll go with that. Fuck it, yes.
I think Chelsea and Arsenal are going to have a wonderful game. I think Chelsea are going to beat them 2-1. See, I'm just covering both bases. You
can fuck off with your editing bollocks.
I had to do it. It's the way this game works. Mm-hmm.